Hello, class. Oh, class, settle down. Everybody, class, take your seats. Take your seats, class. Hey, spit out that gum. Come on, we're going to have some respect in this class. Now, my name is Mr. Jones, and I am the substitute today on account of Kendra not being able to be here quite yet, which I will mark them tardy for. So that will go on Kendra's permanent record. But I'm here to teach you and the whole class a valuable lesson. You want to know how valuable it is? It's roughly $2,000 to $3,000 because that's how much I was charged by the school that I go to for this class. That's how much this is worth. And I am now passing on this lesson to you. This lesson in the form of a presentation that I did in my class. So, let's bring this up. The name of this is called What Might a National Plan for Sustainable Suburbia Look Like? And I would like to cachet ahead of time that there are certain parts of this proposal and this plan that are rather moderate, that if somebody else proposed them, we might goof on them on this show, but we're not going to goof on my plans here because, well, for one, I wanted to get a good grade. And that's why I needed to do something a little bit more moderately focused than I might otherwise on this show. I cannot, so there are things we've said on the show that I cannot say in class. I think we know which things those are. And then the second thing is I'm a big old hypocrite. Those are the only things you got to know. So, what might a national plan for sustainable suburbia look like? Well, let's start off with the question, what are the suburbs? Well, broadly defined, it's municipalities outside the urban core, but within commuting distance. 55% of Americans live in what are classified as suburbs. The demographics are getting more diverse, but also older and less affluent. And what is hidden in that the suburbs are getting more diverse than they were before. Suburbs themselves are still staying pretty homogenous. It's just that individual suburbs are the suburbs as a whole are becoming less white, but the white ones are still staying very white. It's just that certain ones are becoming more populated with people of color. But rest assured, the suburbs themselves are still very divided. They are car-focused living. Sometimes we refer to them as bridge and tunnelers. They cancel out, according to the UC Berkeley, all of the carbon reductions that are made in cities with sustainable, dense living, like all the ways in which cities try to improve their functions to be better suited to the coming future of the climate. All of that is canceled out by what happens in the suburbs. That's how unsustainable suburbs are. For reasons among what we talked about on the last time I did this, lawns. But we can't get back into lawns this time. Generally, they're considered distinct from small towns, rural areas, exurbs. The distinction varies what the difference between those things are. But generally, those things are thought of as different ideas. But we can't say for certain what the exact difference is. Let's go to the next slide here. So here is something that is related, but not quite the same, which is sprawl. Sprawl is a characteristic of suburbs, but cities can also be sprawling, and suburbs don't necessarily have to be sprawling. This is based on I don't need to give citations for you. None of you are professors, but you can see I have a citation at the bottom there. Characteristics of sprawl include lack of density, single-use zoning. Single-use zoning meaning commercial is over here, residential is over here. If we can, actually, let's go back to the last slide there for a second. This over here is a great example of it. What I have that picture in the right there, because that is the Brick Plaza in Brick, New Jersey, where I grew up, and you can see all of the parking space used and all of the interior there is all commercial. And then as the commercial has started to deteriorate there, they've had to just put more and more commercial around the outside. None of this is integrated. It's all single use, and that's why it's poor land use. All right, let's go back. Oh, I think we have somebody showing up for class.
Hi, everyone. Hello.
Oh, look who it is. It's the class clown who thinks they're...
Yes, yeah, I know. Listen, Professor Jones. Yeah. Shut up, nerd, but teach us about suburban sprawl as well.
All right. Listen. You read the syllabus. You know how this will affect your participation grade.
Okay, well, could I eat food? Could I eat food in class?
Ooh, you know what? I do want to be a cool teacher, so I will allow that.
Thank you. I was gonna do it even if you said no. Just
okay.
So you know, but.
Okay. Well, hey, it's your grade. So yes. So single-use zoning, lack of a downtown, inaccessible street networks are all examples of this. You can actually see this if you look. Have fun on Google Earth sometimes and look at the difference in Street View, or not in Street View, but like in the Google Earth view of like how the streets are laid out in a city, in a gridded area, even like Boston where it's not a grid, but like things are always intersecting and stuff like that. And then you can scroll your way over to some suburb and everything is very windy, and intentionally these developments are hard to get out of. So that inaccessible street networks is another thing. And what do we get from sprawl? Well, we get poor land use. The land is not used to its you're using a lot of land for very little return on it. You get high per capita emissions. People in the suburbs emit a whole lot. Part of that is because of the car culture, but there's many reasons why you have high per capita emissions in sprawling areas. There's economic disinvestment over time. Even though they were moved there because people had money and they moved in there, over time they don't have reasons that people want to stay or do anything because you're too sprawled to be connected to anything. So there's disinvestment, and there's health risks. You are significantly less healthy if you live in a suburb because you pretty much walk to the end of your driveway, get in your car, and then drive somewhere and then walk to the door. Among other things, the pollution of cars creates bad air for people. There's a lot of bad outcomes of sprawl. So let's go.
But Professor Jones, what about the gym? What if you do GTL in the suburbs? Is that?
So I mean, you can do that. There is some interesting research that I don't know very much about, but people have researched people who have lived environments that require them to be active, like walkable cities, versus people who go to the gym. And the difference is fairly negligible, except the people who go to the gym are paying for it. And also because of the nature of the hours of a gym and the payment required to be a part of a gym, the health risks in the suburbs, and I'm glad you pointed this out. Health risks in the suburbs are disproportionately affect poor and minority people who are less likely to have the time to go to the gym, or who are less likely to have the money to go to the gym. So yes, if you are somebody who has enough money to gym, tan laundry, maybe not tan. There's no way that's good for you. But
well, the vitamin D, you know what I mean?
Yes, that's true. I just went to my doctor and he told me that I'm low on vitamin D. I wonder if I started going to a tanning salon, how he'd feel about that.
You gotta do the tea. Yeah, that's what you gotta do.
Yes. So how do you unsprawl? And this is a really neat book that I took a little look at when I was writing. I didn't read the whole thing, but I took a look at it when I was writing. It's called The Urban Sprawl Repair Kit by Galina Tachevia. And it's what they do in that book is they look at some of the classic suburban structures and see how you can unsprawl them. So the one all the way on the left there, that is a strip mall. And if you look at what was done to the strip mall, the parking was removed or moved around. The buildings were made large. The building fronts were made larger. The building is closer to the street level. You can see there's a little bus right in front of there because as it grows, it gives reason for the bus stops there. You put more greenery around the edges, and then you create a little bit of like an area for people to sit and hang out there in the middle there, rather than just more parking lot area. In the middle image there is a gas station. And what do you do with the gas station? Well, you keep the gas station there, but create larger green buffers on the outside of it, and then also put stores on the front there. So walkable, you turn this gas station into a walkable block there. You can see that there. And then all the way on the right there, another classic of the suburb, the chain restaurant. Look at the way that the regular way that your Denny's or your maybe your Outback Steakhouse might be set up there at the top, and then at the bottom you've reinvigorated it by adding a chain of stores in the exterior all around it, removing some of the parking to make room for other things, creating incentive for more buildings to pop up in the area. So these are pretty simple, useful guides. I believe that they're also going for a mixed zoning look there. If you can tell in that bottom right image there that there's a second floor, which has could be apartment buildings, Yes, I said a Denny's. What? Why am I getting criticized for saying Denny's? But that's what. Yes, so that's one. That's an example of how you could do it, and then we can see more examples, more practical ones in the next image.
Professor Zach, if you could choose one chain restaurant to keep in the revolution, which one would it be?
One, it's got to be Waffle House, right?
Good choice.
I've never been to one, so I need to go to one. It's very cheap.
You should go to one.
Yeah.
In fact, next time you visit your family in Jersey, take like a day trip over to Ohio. Go to a Waffle House.
How far do you think Ohio is from New Jersey? It's
far, but you could
not a day
trip. Like a 36-hour vacation and go to a Waffle House.
Okay. And also, I'm not going to Ohio. Come on. I'm going to go somewhere better than that. But yes, so Waffle. Okay. Yeah, I think Waffle House is cheap. Waffle House I've never been to one, and Waffle House serves a very specific function for disaster relief control. That if it goes away, we won't have we don't have any equivalent to the Waffle House index for
so true.
For gauging the severity of storms. So Waffle House.
So true. You're so true.
Yeah. So these are some examples from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council's Retrofitting the Suburbs, a project being done in Massachusetts. And these pictures undertake sort of the same things that I was talking about here. You see some strip malls being turned into downtowns. You see a regular mall being turned into like sort of a neighborhood. You see Dior Dedham is being, it looks like it's very one story. Now there's multiple stories. And these don't necessarily on their own do anything about sprawl, but they tell us that we do have a pretty good idea of what retrofitting sprawl looks like. What, from a sort of architectural, constructural level, we do understand how it would look to get rid of sprawl. And then, let's go. So then it raises the question, if we can on the next slide, why doesn't any of this happen? Is everybody on board with this? Well, apparently not so, because during 2021, the Pew Research Center had a poll that showed that people would prefer to live in sprawl at a higher rate than they did 2 years earlier. Really, it does jump. The way COVID certainly added to it, the way that people preferred sprawl to density, which in itself I don't think says very much, because you can create any sort of outcomes that you want out of this by the way you phrase questions and what you tell people. But it does tell us that sprawl versus density is something that is leveraged politically, as the former president in his former Twitter account said in the picture to the right. I'm happy to inform people that their suburban lifestyle dream, you will no longer be bothered or financially hurt by having low-income housing built in your neighborhood. There's definitely a political and especially racial component to how people talk about this. And it seems like while one side seems very clear about being open and honest about how they feel about it, people who are for density would rather talk about it in sort of like very sort of clinical terms rather than politically weaponize it the way that it should be. So if we move to the next slide here, here's an example of why you have the problem, because you have all of these areas in Massachusetts, for example, in the greater Boston area, that have varying different levels of sprawl, varying different levels of density, and there's no incentive for any one of them to be the one who picks it up. Why would Woburn do it when Framingham is there, or why would Framingham could say we've already done way more than Wellesley, so why would we want to take up anything? There's none of these places in of themselves have any as a specific municipality have any incentive to be the one who does something about sprawl, especially when you consider how politically charged it is. And then further on, we can move to the next slide. Here's a pop quiz question for you related to this. What do all of these cities have in common? New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, Charlotte, Washington, D.C., Boston, Portland, Oregon, Memphis, Louisville, St. Louis, Kansas City, Minneapolis.
I have no idea.
Yeah,
Professor Jones.
So there's many answers that you could possibly give to that, but to me, the one that is worthwhile talking about here is that all of these are major U.S. cities that have a metro area that extends beyond the borders of the state they are in. So you can't even make this a state level issue, because from the point of view of, let's say you want it, it's too expensive to live in New York now. We obviously need to do something about the greater New York area to make it more dense to support the people who want to live and work in New York. But does that become New Jersey's job to do? Does it become Connecticut's job to do? Does it become Long Island's job to do? There will obviously be it is a national issue, because the problem in all of these states extends beyond the borders of that state. Hence, it is national. Yeah. And then let's move on. So who can fix this? Department of Transportation, Environmental Protection Agency, HUD, Housing and Urban Development. All of these groups have very much incentives to fix sprawl. One wants to incentivize denser transit-oriented living by expanding transportation options. One should be encouraging housing authorities to build denser, more sustainable housing. And the other should use climate as a catalyst to encourage suburban reform that cuts down on per capita emissions. Obviously, since I've made this, the EPA has been gutted by the Supreme Court, which sucks.
Thanks, Supreme Court.
But also that in some ways makes me even more right than I was before, because if the EPA wants to do something about the environment, now they're going to have to. If they can't regulate emissions like they once did, they should be putting their funding towards initiatives like this for sustainable living. So even when I'm wrong, I'm still right. And then what do we have next? We could pilot this idea in cities. Obviously, a lot of cities still need to be de-sprawled. Pre-existing transit stops are a great place. Anywhere where there is an existing commuter rail stop, or a whatever the equivalent is in other cities and states. Those transit-oriented development, always useful, because the stop's there, so might as well be dense around it. College campuses, kids love this shit. Students would love to be able to take a 20-minute train into the city wherever they're at. County seats. County seats tend to have an investment, because there's a lot of municipal and government type of buildings there. Anywhere where there's a lot of government buildings, those can't go, and you can't ship your government jobs off to like another country or something like that. So
that makes sense.
Anything, anywhere you can create density around can be an easy place to do it. And any area that is heavily grayfielded or disinvested in the suburbs, grayfields are basically as opposed to brownfields are places where there was previous industry, and now there may be environmental issues with the grounds where something was. Grayfield is somewhere where there was construction there, but now there's no reason to believe that there's any sort of ground contamination or any sort of industrial issues. It's just it's just used up lots. A lot of malls in different cities are becoming grayfields because nobody's using them.
Okay.
So yes, anywhere that has a lot of gray fields would be a great. People don't like their gray fields. And then if we move to the next slide.
All right, incentives.
Here's how we're going to incentivize this. We're going to have a carrot and stick. The carrot is federally fund the transit. If you want that transit, the money's there. They're gonna cover it. Buy out gray fields for community to make them into community land trusts, so that the community owns the land, and the land is not then subject to market rates. They are subject to the community. And if the government says, hey, we only have a certain amount of money for this, that gives the cities and states with a lot of gray fields a lot of incentive to put in as soon as possible so they can get this done as soon as possible. You can have, I know this is a coward opinion, but I'm saying tax breaks and mortgage subsidies. But for the building of ADUs, auxiliary dwelling units, which you can see in the picture there, a lot of people have properties that have room for another building. Maybe you have a big garage that can be converted. Maybe you have an attic or loft space that can be converted into another unit. So accessory dwelling units do not come without their own problems, but they do create scenarios where we get more people living per acre in suburbs by adding more units to large suburban plots. And then you could also do different subsidies for local food and for entertainment, just to have a reason to build around. And then the stick. Here's where we're gonna fuck them. Here's where we're gonna get them for what they're doing. Where if you're not here for building dense transit, withdraw the road funds. Take any state that doesn't want to build rail, take away their road funds. Then they're gonna realize, oh wait, actually maybe we do want to build rail because we don't want people mad at us. Land use / vacancy fees. You can change. Land value taxes are an interesting thing because as it works right now, your property taxes are based on the value of the property. So oftentimes that disincentivizes people from building larger and denser because then the tax on that property will go up. But if you're taxing the land value instead, that does not change based on what you put on there. So you're no longer incentivized to do a bad job of utilizing the land around you. And then zoning override thresholds, like Massachusetts has 40B. A similar thing for the whole country would be 40B is fun to say like Cardi B, but what it says is, hey, if you are a city in Massachusetts and you do not hit your 10% affordability threshold, developers are allowed to come in and usurp your zoning rules and use just the state zoning rules until your city hits that 10% affordability rate. So if you're in a rich suburb or something like that, a developer who buys some land can build as big as they want to, provided you are still under the affordability level in that, and provided they are building for affordability. So in conclusion, to make the future of suburban living sustainable, we must realize that the issues that currently plague it are not the result of individually rigid local practices and zoning rules, but instead a pattern of unsustainable consumption models replicated throughout the country and then exported internationally as cultural signifiers of middle-class comfort. Though local efforts will determine the special fixes that each municipality requires, the problems have much broader roots and therefore require much broader response. And then I asked the class if they had any questions, and
Well, so, I asked the one about the chain restaurant that you would keep. In a just world, how do you think Waffle House would operate? Like in a world that had good, dense city planning.
Yes. Well, first of all, everybody who works at the Waffle House would be a Teamster.
Hell yeah.
That would be one. Yeah, I mean, because it is interesting because everything doesn't have to be a city. It's just that things that are heavily populated do need to be cities. So there is still going to be room, I think, for small town. There's always going to be room for small towns. There's always going to be room for rural areas for people to live in. And they, you can still have obviously, I think there's a lot of roadside Waffle Houses, on long trips, stuff like that. There's still always going to be a place for that. I would also like to see Waffle Houses in the city because I intend on living in cities, so they should be there. But yes, we would want to see Waffle Houses that are built with sustainability in mind, that pay people well, and hopefully we can incorporate some walkability because. If you're going to a Waffle House, there's a good chance you're drunk, so you should be able to walk there.
True.
And
true.
And we should find ways to have mixed use so that somebody can, maybe you don't have a very fancy apartment, but you live above the Waffle House. So that's pretty cool. So those would be some examples of, I think.
I like that. Professor Zach, I think a class is almost up, or a class is up.
Yes.
Okay. So,
yes.
Well, I'll let the people also attending class know that at 9:30, Rachel Jane Andelman and Adi Heller will be doing honorable mentions. It's going to be very funny. And yeah, we usually have more segments, but we learned so much about land use. I think this is a good argument to just seize some land.
Right. Right.
You know, just have fun. Just
yeah. I mean, I was very I didn't tell you how to do. I told you what you kind of should do, how you do it. You know, I'm sure you can come up with some ideas.
We'll figure it out. All right, everyone. Thank you so much, and we will see you next week.